to the Exit Over Here podcast. This ridiculous. Thank you for taking the time to give us a listen. I'm JP Lee, and with me as always is
Adrian Alderette.
And before we begin, I'd like to introduce a couple special guests, recurring panelist and longtime friend of the show,
Jonathan Fisher.
He looked at me like I was crazy, and like apparently we're not friends. And also long lost friend of the show, Mr.
Sean Howard.
There we go. Okay.
Let's not forget these nuts.
We also have a snack.
In front of
us. If you hear sound effects of crunching.
You made it worse.
We're currently polling at 5th for the presidential race.
Okay, wait, what?
You hear about that in South Carolina? People wrote in D's nuts, and it got 9% of the vote.
I'll tell you what, I would vote for
That's awesome.
This is what happens when the social media cycle is like 3 minutes. I'm like, wait, what? I'm sorry. Okay, I couldn't let that go. I'm like, what are you talking about?
That's what she said.
All right, let's just jump in, shall we? Okay, so Star Wars: The Force Awakens has now been in theatrical release for a little over 1 week now, and it's shattering box office records at home and abroad. And China doesn't even get it for a couple weeks. The film broke the opening weekend global box office record set by earlier 2015 darling Jurassic World with $525 million in its first few days, and is poised to cross over $1 billion by the end of the holiday weekend. So buoyed by universal acclaim and strong word of mouth, the 7th installment of the Star Wars franchise should reign supreme for weeks to come, at least until Deadpool comes.
Woo!
Which brings us now to this roundtable discussion. We all know the phrase "a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." All right? So in 10 words or less, which, I mean, they were good enough for George Lucas, give me your best review of the film in 10 words. And I'll start with Jonathan. It's so dramatic.
There are more like 5 short 2-word phrases, but...
We invite you to the show. You break the damn rules.
Best execution, extremely fun, great marketing, perfect timing,
Oh, nice. I did count. That was 10. Dramatic reading of it, but it was 10.
Adrian, what is yours?
Alrighty, my review, it's not so much 10 words, but just one really long...
He's gone over.
You're gonna get...
long word.
Breaking the rules.
Everybody made that noise after the movie.
I wish you could have seen his face just then.
Sean.
It was a man possessed.
10 words. Thought any...
Mine's definitely not 10. It's shorter.
Yeah, of course it is.
Whatever. That's messed up. That's so messed
I
up.
can't moderate this.
Mine is, it was an awakening for new and old Star Wars fans.
Nice.
Ooh.
Very cool.
I expect that from you.
That was
Was the Force also awakened?
That was quite witty, sir.
No, you're like, we weren't awakened during the...
I wrote that down. I was going to forget that like 30 seconds after.
He had his notes.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so mine is, quote, the most fun I've ever had at the movies. Ever.
And it's true. It is true, I was there.
And then we went... So let's preface real quick. We all went together to see this movie, opening night, 7 o'clock, IMAX 3D screening. And
7 o'clock.
By 9:30, we were out of the theater and immediately in line to get tickets to the next available.
We're so
screen.
jazzed.
So, so I feel like it's the consensus, and I can speak for everyone in the group when I say that we loved this movie, and it goes without saying. And it seems like almost consensus around the world that this movie is universally loved at this point. There are a few people who have, I think, some reasonable, problems with the film that we'll get into and kind of disprove. I think to a certain extent.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's more important for us to break down not so much that we love the movie and just start yelling about why we loved it and why we're fanboys and fangirls about it. But let's explain why the film actually works and perhaps why it works for an audience that's kind of fickle. Like our generation is kind of a pain in the ass when it comes to movie going.
Yeah.
And it seems to be you're a pretty hard to please guy, Adrian.
This is true.
And you walked out of that theater as much a fanboy as Sean was, and he had expectations of loving it regardless. So everyone kind of went out of that theater feeling like a 10-year-old.
Exactly.
Awesome. But before we get into our breakdown, I think it's important to say that we're going to go into sort of a spoiler mode now. So if you have not watched the movie yet, you've had a week or so to do so. We will give you a pass this one time. Please pause this, go to the theater, see it, come back, press on pause, continue listening, and we're going to jump in from there. So let's start with structure. And it kind of speaks to some of the writing, some of the overall, just the feel of the film itself. You want to speak to the criticism that some people had?
Yeah, obviously I live on social media, and one of the things, and obviously speaking with, I live with three other guys that are not Star Wars fans.
Okay.
They enjoy going to the movies, not often, but they're people that are like, if they're bored and there's nothing to do, they'll say, hey, you know what? Let's go see Creed or something. So for them, they were like, oh, Star Wars is coming on. We'll watch it eventually.
Yeah.
So when they finally saw it and they came back, they're like, dude, we want to talk to you about it. And the one complaint, and it seems to be going around the internet, is that it seemed too much like A New Hope. Like structure-wise. They're like, it felt a lot like with the beginning, how it's set up. Then we have this unknown who kind of looks like, for this one it was Rey instead of Luke Skywalker, thrust into this world that they're not a part of, gets a droid out of nowhere, and all that stuff.
Kills a giant Death Star.
Kills a giant Death Star thing, and I'm like, and a lot of people are like, well, man, you know, it's too much like A New Hope, you know, what the hell? And I kind of want you to continue this on, because I want to piggyback on what we all, I think, universally think, that the structure of the movie, there are people that are criticizing it for that, are the same people that say that they like Star Wars, but realistically speaking, just say that so they don't get laughed at nowadays.
I was gonna say,
whereas
it's
a year
unpopular
ago,
not to be a Star Wars fan.
whereas a year ago they're like, oh, Star Wars, yeah, whatever. But like, I want you to like break it down, because I feel like you do it in such a classy way, as opposed to me saying you're fucking wrong, man.
Set the stage so friggin' high. Good
Let's
Lord.
go.
So I'll keep it short and sweet. For me, the reason why I have a hard time with people saying it's too much like A New Hope is because they've never read Joseph Campbell, and that's he breaks down what's called the hero's journey, and that's basically every movie that's worth a damn in Hollywood. If it's The Matrix, if it's A New Hope, it's any movie where there's a main character who is taken out of his or her comfort zone and thrust into something that motivates a plot. And that's what their problem is. I feel like it's superficially, it was a sand planet with a droid, and then they went on an adventure. I feel like if they had changed the aesthetics of the beginning of the film, it may not have actually played as negatively to some people.
Yeah.
It seems weird. Like, it may have been just that little bit that everyone was like, oh, no, it's too much like Luke. I'm like, well, Luke, that was a perfect storyline. Like, why not revisit some of those themes? Like,
or done the whole, like, round table, like, defensive strategy where they're like, how are we going to get the forces down on this giant...
Oh, yeah, that was similar. It was a throwback. But it worked the first time, so why not do it again? Like, and I loved that when Han was like, he's like, there's always a way to, like...
That's appeared in every single Star Wars movie.
It's great. Those send-ups are, I think, crucial to why people love this movie.
What do you think, Jonathan? Like, when people say the structure is too similar to New Hope, do you think it's just, like...
I think it's very similar to A New Hope, but it's also very similar to any movie that's going to basically, like, set the way for, like, a good number of, like, sequels. So it had to introduce everyone, and it had to also do callbacks. And, like, it was very similar to how we did Star Trek. Like, it blended the new with the old, like, seamlessly.
Yeah.
And I thought it was perfect.
I agree.
I just think the structure was purely done for the handoff of the new characters.
Yeah.
It brings in the new fans, catches them up immediately on what's going on, and then it hands it off through the entire movie.
No, absolutely.
It's so smartly done. I don't know. That's why I don't have a problem with it, because I just think it was smart.
And it just, and like, exactly, just to, like, my last point for this topic is that it is smart because it's very intentional. Like, everybody that worked on this movie is a major fan of Star Wars. And they're recognized.
Yeah.
They didn't they brought in Lawrence Kasdan, one of the guys that actually wrote the original trilogy, to be a part of this, and that's not an accident. The biggest complaint before this movie was that they were scared that it would be like the prequels.
Yeah.
And the one thing the prequels was missing is that it didn't feel like a Star Wars, like the original trilogy.
It also wasn't fun. Like,
It
the
wasn't
original
fun.
ones, they had funny moments and kind of slapsticky things.
Exactly.
It wasn't fun.
It was trying too hard.
Exactly.
Yeah, and my argument is, and I think it's completely true, is that J.J. Abrams and the team involved said that in order for us to bring the fans back, we have to wink at the originals. So we have to have, when people watch this movie, they're like, oh my gosh, that felt like A New Hope. And everybody that watches it coincidentally say, hey, that felt like A New Hope, but they're thinking it's a negative. No, that was intentional.
Right, you can't resent the wink, because that's part of the reason why people find it so endearing.
Yeah.
And I think to transition to our next point is something that Sean said, is that the reason why the structure worked is it helped introduce characters, and like what Jonathan said is it motivates for future sequels. It kind of lays that foundation. I think that the pacing and editing of the film kind of lent itself to that as well. And I feel like the very first couple of minutes of the movie, within I'd say 5 minutes, you've recognized, either directly or indirectly, you've met all 5 of the new major characters, which is kind of crazy to think of them doing. Like, usually you spread that kind of stuff out, and it really takes almost an hour to get characters that we know, which is kind of a ballsy thing to do for a film that, like, you're setting the stakes on characters that we know nothing about, and that's kind of terrifying. But the pacing and the editing really works to that advantage. I don't know if there's like that first scene, if you guys want to speak to that, because that was just
to me, like at first, the one thing I was like, I'll take the first whole, not only the first scene, but the whole first sequence, like the second Kylo Ren lands to where they take Poe Dameron away.
Okay.
Like up to that point, the reason I was worried when Kylo Ren caught Poe Dameron, and Poe Dameron was trying to be in like this like slick talking Han Solo type.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that was kind of weird.
You talk now.
That was
Who talks?
At first I laughed. I'm like, okay, don't be like that. But the second Kylo Ren stopped the blast in using the Force in like midair, and then the second they rounded up all the families and killed everybody, and they took him on the ship, and I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, this is not going to be like what the way that we were hinting toward, because it was not going to be like, oh, we're going to get you, man.
I thought he was going to kill Finn too. For deflecting, is that the word?
Yeah, for deferring from shooting and not doing anything.
Yeah.
He did. I did feel, and that was set up because you saw how ominous he was and how he didn't have to even deflect a blaster.
No.
He just stopped it. Like to me is just, that's another level.
And
of,
he didn't have to keep his hand up. It was just bam.
That's
so bad.
But,
oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely.
But that first sequence was really terrific, because it showed you where the First Order is in regards to the universe.
Yep.
And who Kylo Ren is and the reputation that he has. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I also like as far as pacing doesn't even have to do with any like real shot footage. My favorite pacing was the first line of the crawl. Luke Skywalker has vanished.
Yes.
And I was like, there you go. That's how you start a freaking story. It's like, you know what? We're not going to dress up saying, oh, he's somewhere. It's like, no, nobody knows where he is.
Yeah.
And we knew clearly that based off this new trilogy, it's going to be surrounding Luke Skywalker.
And that's a really good point, because the first word we saw was Luke, so then we were okay waiting an hour to see Han Solo, because we were like, oh, no, we're getting to Luke. Like, it's important that we're moving forward with this. I don't care where we are, you know.
I will say this, though. I wanted to say, if my only complaint about the pacing, I think that, and it's forgivable in my opinion, is when the second Rey and Finn steal the Millennium Falcon. Mm-hmm. The second, shortly after they get into space, Han Solo's there waiting for him. And they already get him.
He was kind of hovering just above the planet.
Yeah.
I'll go off of that. Like, it was very, like, at that moment when Han Solo was introduced, I'm like, oh my god, there's so much stuff happening. Like, it's after another. I'm like, I need a second to breathe. But like upon further viewings, like, you just go for it because it's like so fun.
It's true.
But they do it, I think, deliberately with how they cut it together, because it's the newer audience who just wants stuff right now, like boom, 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 boom. Yeah. It's like the YouTube, so they're applying that, but they kept like, I don't know, the original kind of Star Wars-y format to it to keep the older audience in there too.
It's true. Sorry.
The only part that I've ever felt like dragged a little bit was ever when Kylo Ren was going to like visit Snoke, and like those moments were just a little like solemn and slow.
I think
but
the
I think
Gregorian chants too, like kind of slowed things down. You felt like you were kind of in like a substance within that room. It kind of felt bogged down.
I love that, and I know this kind of probably transitions into the character section that we're going to be going into, but I like that everybody got their, I don't want to say their 5 minutes, but everybody got their moments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kylo Ren, my favorite moment of his was when after he was kind of called out by Snoke, saying, hey, you know, I see that there's still some battling within you about whether, there's some, like, there's no, that you're still battling about being on the dark side. He's like, nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah, no,
and then all of a sudden he goes away and he's like, he pretty much starts praying to Darth Vader. He's like, look, man, I do feel something. Like, guide me, like, tell me what should I do to get rid of this stupid feeling? And then obviously later on we find out what he needs to do.
What his motivation.
But there's also that theory that he's like a double agent.
Yeah. See,
That's interesting.
I don't want him to be Professor Snape. I don't want that.
Yeah.
No. Like, we already had that, and it was such a good reveal in 7 books. I don't know if I need that in this, but we'll get into conspiracy theories because there's a few things that I think will motivate the conversation as we go. Yes. But to tie the pacing to some of the character discussion, like you said, I think as quick as everything was to begin the movie, the way they kind of just slowed things down with the introduction of Rey, I thought was really important. Because we got so much going on, and we met 4 of the 5 characters early on in the first scene, but then we meet Rey, and it's like, okay, everyone stop, and it was almost like coming out of Lightspeed. You just kind of like grind to a halt, and you're just mesmerized by the score from John Williams, the visuals of this giant mountain of sand. She's in these like carcasses of old like
Star
ships
destroyers.
and things. I mean, just the scenery of that, it really harkened back to the originals, but it also motivated, like, why am I staring at this? She doesn't speak for, like, 4 minutes in the movie. it was like watching WALL-E.
And then the last shot being her just leaned up against one of the
with the helmet on. To me, that was like one of my favorite shots of the entire movie. I was just
great.
like, oh, that's how I feel whenever I get a toy. I'm like, oh, I'm in the
and
movie.
then, like just exactly like what you're trying to say is that you find everything out about her in that little mini sequence when she's cooking her food, and then she sits down, puts the helmet on. She's seeking her adventure. She's seeking for the next thing. You already know. You're like, she didn't have to say a freaking thing.
No, it's true. And even when she's scrubbing down the parts and she looks over at the older woman and she sees herself in her and she's like kind of like, oh my god, like.
Or she's having to make all the marks on the wall of how many days she's been there without her family.
You just see like someone who hasn't lost hope, which is great because that's a theme kind of throughout all these movies. But like, she's also. It's like it's time for her to have some kind of change, which is really interesting.
That's why she was so like against like going with Han Solo like during the ship. Like she was like having so much fun, but then as soon as he offered it, she's like
internal conflict.
Oh, I'll do it. Oh, I need to go back home.
Yeah, and it's I like when a main character wrestles with stuff and doesn't just go with the flow. As in, whereas Finn seems to have a complete 180 of personality in terms of like he's this stormtrooper who
doesn't want to kill anyone.
Who's taught from birth to do these things and doesn't want to do them, and then he decides I'm gonna take my helmet off and now I'm gonna shoot all the bad guys who were once my friends. Like there was a problem with Finn in that regard, but I forgave all of those flaws because I thought he was like probably the funniest character in the movie. Like.
And he was really good.
But yeah, like, and it wasn't like cheesy, it wasn't sticky. He was he was really convincing. And he was closest to, I think, what we were as audience members.
I feel like
lost.
Like, he was definitely our perspective. If there was anybody.
Yeah.
Because he, like you were saying, that he not only was trying to make sense of what the hell was going on.
Catch
He's
up
like,
the entire time.
He's like, okay, the First Order is under control. He's like, but wait a second, what are we exactly doing here? He's like, why are we killing all these people? Who is this Luke Skywalker?
Oh yeah, I just thought of that because when like Han explains it all to them and they're like, oh, it's all real, it's all real. He probably grew up like on the rebellion.
The First Order. Yeah.
First Order, and he was taught nothing about that.
Yeah,
so he has like no idea what
it's
it
weird
is.
that even for him it's a myth. He just doesn't understand. That's interesting to think about. I'd never even.
And the thing is, like, and I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like you said it before. Like this was a movie that brought old fans back using the original structure, so to speak, and the that nostalgia feeling, and it brought the new fans in by telling them kind of like not necessarily like spoon feeding them, but basically saying is like, look, you guys are these people. Everything they used to hear. Like when kids nowadays watch the original trilogy, they laugh at it because they're like everything's outdated.
Some of the stuff doesn't hold up.
Like, we always hear this is really great. Like it must have been some sort of stupid myth.
We have our version now.
It's like now, like that was such a great, well written scene. It's just like it's true. All of it's true.
Like trying to keep his lazy eye open.
Just have smile frown. I'm like that was so well done because he's telling the audience, he's telling the young audience, he's like.
He was almost staring right at the camera, too. The way that they pointed everything, it was a great moment. I think Finn and Poe need to have, like, a bromance, like
a gay relation. Oh,
no. No, like a buddy cop spin-off movie I would, like, watch. A trilogy of that on its own. I would love that.
They're going to be together. I think he's going to take him under his wing.
I think
literally.
Seriously, I feel like Finn's injury might even, like, limit him. Like, he was pretty roughed up at the end of the movie. He might end up being, you know how, like, they have a droid in certain situations?
Oh my god.
No, he might be, like, the Goose and Maverick, like, combination. Because they were really good co-pilots with each other in that,
he's like a paraplegic. He can only sit in the back.
Well, no, but, I mean, he might not be able to, like...
That won't be. We're still
no, that's not what I meant. But I mean, I feel like they wouldn't do that to Finn without having a reason for it. And I feel like it's not just going to be like, well, I'm fine now. Let me go grab a lightsaber and get it out. Like, I feel like there's going to be a reason for maybe him staying behind when she's training and, like, them, you know, building a relationship, a friendship, Jonathan. A quick thing on BB-8, awesome. Is that consensus?
Oh yeah. The second he put the thumbs up in there, I was like,
that was arguably my favorite.
Finn too.
Oh my god. So yeah, BB, I was worried that he was going to be a marketing tool,
guy.
but yeah, and I watched the video of like the sound effects that he used to have before Bill Hader came in. Oh, I'm so thankful that Bill Hader fixed it. It was
but
weird.
It's so true. Like I was so over the marketing of him because he was like the main thing marketed.
Oh yeah, I was still hipster on him for a while.
That was so smart. And looking back on it now, I was just like. Even though we knew they were going to give us nothing, they literally just trotted out a toy and said, "You're going to like it."
Yeah,
and
like,
then
no,
we're not telling you nothing.
Not. Yes,
it's brave. That was brave.
Yeah. It's like I dare you not to love him by the end of the movie. And I think we could talk hours about how like Han and Chewie's introduction, I think, was really cool to see. I think all the characters were introduced funny. I think C-3PO had one of the funniest intros.
Yeah,
they did a really good job of like incorporating humor into a lot of the introductions, and I feel like maybe for a later discussion, but I really want to spend a couple of minutes on Kylo Ren because I feel like that is arguably one of the more popular characters, but also one of the least. Like some people have a big problem with him, more Ben than Kylo Ren, because some people had a problem with him taking his helmet off. So there's a little bit of discussion. So consensus: did we like him as a villain?
I love him.
I freaking loved Kylo Ren.
I
thought it was awesome.
Me too.
Like my only downfall with him was when him and Han Solo. Like, I didn't feel the connection that they were supposed to have.
I could see that.
But they were in the movie so quick, and they never really interacted. So
no, and that's probably a problem.
It might get like flashbacks.
I might have a reason. I might have a reason for that, though.
What I was gonna say, sorry.
No, it's a cliffhanger because we'll get to
was that I didn't like when he first took his helmet off. I'm like, oh my god, he looks so young. But then when I did research, he's like 30 something.
He's like 32 in real life, yeah.
And then the other funny thing is that like all my friends on Facebook and Twitter who watch like girls are like, oh my god, anyone who's seen Star Wars like text me now. Like I think it's ridiculous that like he plays the same exact character in Girls as he plays in Star Wars.
Really?
And I don't watch Girls.
I don't know. Yeah,
but maybe he's this conflicted like.
But this like some people didn't like that he acted like a spoiled rat basically. Yeah. I'm like that's Hayden Christensen's character. That's not what he is.
I say to them I've never seen Girls. I've seen like I remember a snippet of Girls once, but to them I say I'm like go suck it. I'm like obviously you're obsessed with the show. And you just can't get it out of your head, or be wise enough to be like, "Hey, I could separate character to character." Han Solo is Indiana Jones,
but I don't see Indiana Jones and Han Solo.
Right. Yeah,
that's true. And that's a harder thing to disassociate too. So if he's that good,
Okay, I'm ready to come in now.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you brought all those things up because what I really liked about him, he looked badass. Yeah, he wanted to live up to being the next Darth Vader and all this stuff. But what I liked so much about it, J.J. Abrams said it too, is that even though like you have a story about a protagonist in Rey who's unfinished, that eventually she's going to become this really great protagonist. It was interesting that he's like, you know what? Let's have an antagonist that's unfinished. And to me, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I thought, and even though like he's wielding a lightsaber already, he already uses the Force or the dark side of the Force, and he has at least some training. Like everything that the story referred to him or how they presented him was so awesome because he's not done yet. He's not Darth Vader. He's not the Joker yet. He's not. I've always been interested in seeing how does a villain develop, and for this one, the thing that I really liked the most was that when he was praying to Darth Vader, like I said before, he's like he wants to prove to himself. He's like, look, I'm capable of being like a full on dark side. He's like, I'll prove it. I'll prove it to you. And then when the Han Solo, when he kills Han Solo. To me, and he even says thank you to Han Solo, and I was just like, that was so good. Like I thought that was so awesome. That we've always. I'm not saying that it's the first time we've ever seen it. I can't think. I can't think of previously the last time I saw a villain that had to prove to himself that he was a villain and then go forward.
At least not in a coexisting film where the protagonist is also at the same point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like usually have like an established, and maybe not Batman per se, but a protagonist that has sort of standing either in the community or within the film itself, and then the antagonist comes.
Yeah, because we like you mentioned, like we've always seen the story where like in every Marvel movie, ever like in the individual solo films, they always have that one moment. It's like, all right, I have to decide if I want to be a hero.
Yeah,
it was interesting to see. It's like, okay, I'm interested in being a villain. Like this is the moment you get to prove yourself, and he did it. And I was just, to me, that blew me away. I know, I know that was like kind of like most people, to the average fan, that was just like, oh well, he just killed Han Solo. He was going to do it anyway. It's like, no, he was battling to do it right there at that moment.
And he arguably had to do it with his mask off because, and the people who have a hard time with the mask being off, the reason why I think that it had to happen first of all twice because they couldn't have revealed him in that scene on that bridge because there were some people who did laugh the first time they saw him, and then as the character developed they realized like he's actually still, he's vulnerable but he's still a badass, is that he needed to do that as Ben to destroy Ben. Like he claimed Ben was dead, he said he killed him, blah blah blah, but he didn't. There's a piece of him that still needed to do that, and I think that if he'd had the mask on, he would never have gotten that closure. Especially doing that face to face with your father with the mask would have been useless.
Really weird.
He would have been able to hide behind it.
Do you think people would have liked him taking off his mask if his face was kind of beat up?
Everybody assumed that it was. That's
I would have been upset if
my
it was.
uncle, who was like a major Star Wars man, he's like, when he took off his mask, he's like, oh, I was expecting somebody who was really disfigured.
Yeah, he
and
will
at
be
the
in
end
the
of the
next
movie,
one.
yeah, and then
and he
the
left
movie-
his mask on the bridge.
He
Yeah.
did,
Yeah,
so
he
he's
did.
going to have a new...
Yeah.
And someone pointed out, someone who's on Reddit who's seen it probably 5 times now, pointed out that, and it's a minor detail, but the scratch he does get is in the same spot that Han touches his cheek. So it's almost going to be like, he's going to cover that because it's a deformity, but he's almost going to be covering it because I feel like that's going to be like that last thing that like brings him back to what... If
Didn't
he does
Anakin
have
one like on his
he
face?
did
the
have
same spot?
some
Yeah,
kind
but
of
he was
spot
also
there,
his
too.
face.
Yeah.
He's also missing legs, arms.
Oh yeah, he's more robot than anything else at that
everywhere that Ben touched.
It's I mean, if there's anything else Kylo Ren related,
I thought it was. A lot of people thought he was bratty, like complaining all the time.
that was
I'm like,
part of the appeal of the character.
yeah, I understand. That's like he's
his
not
his
done.
tantrums with
I don't
the
even take
lightsaber?
it as bratty.
Yeah.
I just take it as he's just anger and he doesn't know how to like totally control
Right.
it yet.
I
Which
take it
makes
as
him a
both.
very...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too, especially when you're younger. But that makes him such a dangerous villain too, because
Right.
like you have to harness the dark side, and all he has is anger. Like if he could just put that within himself, he's going to be the most terrifying villain I've ever seen in Star Wars. So
I find him badass because he's vulnerable, and we don't get to see
Yeah.
that. Everybody, we always assume someone like Snoke,
Yeah.
this guy who has no weaknesses, doesn't have any emotional vulnerability. This guy has all of it.
Well, that's because that's how villains are usually introduced, is just being like put
Ominous
together
presences.
villain.
Yeah.
They just hate. You don't ever see someone like.
because they're
go into
personifications of evil, you never realize that there's someone behind the mask.
And I like-
it's kind of cool to see the behind the mask.
And the one thing I wanted to bring up, because I didn't see it on the list, but the different layers of villains that we have in this franchise now.
Yeah.
Where, yes, we have Kylo Ren, but then you have who seems to be the head in Snoke. But the other character I really liked was General Hux. General Hux was not afraid of Kylo Ren at all.
And I want to know
He's
their
like standing
history.
his ground.
It almost seemed like they like came up in training together, and like Hux followed the rules, and then I feel like Kylo Ren was like imperfect, but he had so much raw talent, and Hux hates it. Like Hux, you could tell Hux was a nerd, and the other one was just really good.
And Kylo Ren hates gingers too.
That might be a thing.
But man,
Don't start that rumor.
Domhnall Gleeson, man, I
Solid.
he's one of those actors that like obviously he's on the map now, but he's gonna come out in The Revenant too. And
That's true,
the
too.
one thing that I'm like, you watch him
He's
in
good
any
Ex Machina,
movie,
too.
he just is like, he nails everything
So
he
good.
does.
And that character, Hux, is the character that you love to hate because you have there's nothing redeeming about him. Even his voice drives me
That's
nuts.
the thing, he's the villain that we expected.
Yeah.
He's the villain that you're like, this guy has, like, you're not gonna get inside his head.
Yeah.
You're not gonna out scheme him. Like, you have to just straight up beat him.
It's cool to like Kylo Ren because there's someone like Hux to just hate.
That's what I found interesting about marketing. Like we went into the Disney store and stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many toys and like masks and
Oh.
lightsabers for Kylo Ren. And
There-
I'm like,
it's-
as a parent, I would never buy that for my
I don't
kid.
know because people bought Darth Vader all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Weird, but it's cool.
It's
Especially for the fact that he is such a dimensional character.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is cool
that's
to
a
see
very-
that
that's a
the
great way to put it.
merchandising wise he's very similar
Yeah.
to Vader, which is it's awesome. We can kind of fly through some of these next topics if we want to. Like, I think the humor part of this film is worth talking about for like a minute or two.
I came out thinking it was the funniest movie I saw all year.
Yeah, and we
Like
saw
almost
we
as
saw
funny as Trainwreck.
We saw Trainwreck Spy. I mean, there's some funny movies this year. I laughed out loud more in this.
Yes.
Like, there were a good chuckle here or there in
Yeah.
other movies, but and the way they used every laugh to do something. It wasn't just to make it, other than maybe the chewy choking part, but everything else. Like, if it was like, oh, we can't fly that, that's junk, and you're like, okay, that the junk will do, and you turn and it's the freaking
Such
Millennium
a good
Falcon.
reveal.
Oh,
No,
one of the
that's
best
great.
reveals in the
Are you
whole
kidding
That
me?
one was really
The
good because
audience
I was
lost
wondering
their shit.
everybody because when we were watching that I'm just like, oh, not that pilot joke. I'm like, oh, it'd been nice to see what the fuck the pilot was doing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, it's
Oh,
really
it's-
real. And
There's cheers from the crowd when we saw it.
the other thing that I found hilarious was just because of how much I was playing her up before the movie with Captain Phasma was when Finn gets her, he's just like, I'm in charge now, Phasma. Me, I'm in charge. I'm in charge.
I'm the
And
captain.
Yeah, basically.
That was awesome. But
A
no,
lot of people hated those interactions.
a lot of people that hate that think that they're smarter than they actually are.
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be like a super serious movie. Though.
Yeah.
Like, humor happens every day in
Yeah.
everyday life.
And
There's
they
one,
did
like-
it in funny, in serious scenes.
Yeah.
They did
Like,
it. It's awesome.
there are people that I have talked to at work that thought Age of Ultron was the best movie of the year, and then they watched this like, I didn't really like the humor in it. It made me feel dumb. I'm like, says the guy that totally bought that Hawkeye is a farmer. No,
The whole subplot's a joke.
Yeah, I'm like,
He has a bow and arrow, and he's with powerful people in the world.
Oh, God. But yeah, no, but like the one thing I want to say is that, and I know we're gonna talk about it later, as far as how he chose to manage everything. this one felt the humor gave everything heart. Because it wasn't just there to be, oh, let's just put a funny line. It was just, no, we're learning that Finn is this boy. And it was like, oh, I'm in charge now. It's like, hey, this is the first time I could, hey, what,
he's like, hold on.
pumping his chest.
We'll use the Force.
That's not how the Force, that sequence was low because you had Finn not knowing what the Force meant. You had Han Solo telling him that's not how the Force works. Chewie's cold, and he's like, oh, you're cold. It was just that sequence was so great.
I totally forgot about that. So good.
That sequence is hilarious.
This is why we bring you guys on the show.
So smart.
That sequence is so good.
I laughed so hard at that.
Oh, man.
But I think when we get to sort of a rapid fire fun section of this podcast, I think we can talk about like maybe our favorite moments. But
oh yeah,
I think we'll skip some of the production value. Was the fact that JJ stuck with practical effects. Yeah. I mean, even the costume design harkened back to the original stuff. Like they just kept a lot of the heart and the look of the original trilogy, which was great.
And used more, even though it's the most effects they've ever had in a Star Wars movie ever. JJ said is like the most of the effects that we used was to take things out, like the people holding the puppets, the people doing all this stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, so hey.
It's about omitting.
I love Jakku, like the texture on the planet, everything was. Like,
there's a running joke. You know how Anakin's line about how he hates the sand because it's coarse, and I think it was in Attack of the Clones. Yeah. So now everyone's like, Jakku, the sand was a lot finer. And I was just like, yes, because that's probably the worst line in Star Wars history.
It's coarse.
3D, yay or nay? I mean, I think we all saw
awesome.
different formats.
We're not huge 3D people. I think I can speak for everyone there.
Definitely go see
and
it.
Completely worked as 3D.
Yeah. Just the
I'm gonna buy it in 3D.
We are, absolutely. And then when we have a place big enough to actually view it at the right distance from the television, it'll be great.
I will have a couch in your living room to make sure I
pay rent for the 3D viewings. I think I want to touch really quickly on John Williams.
Touch him all you want.
I have to say, there's no way to transition from that. I have to say thank you to John Williams because I've seen some criticism about the score. I find it understated and like a perfect building block from future themes.
Jen hasn't stopped listening to it.
I've literally been listening to it.
I was at work and you were telling me,
I had it on Spotify. I bought the album, been listening on my way to and from work. Like, it's bad. Like, I'm driving it with, like, the Millennium Falcon scene playing while I'm driving. I'm probably
dodging
speeding.
cars.
I have to say sorry. If I'm speeding, like, please know it's John Williams' fault. I think that Rey's theme was beautiful. The way that it was very, like, Harry Potter meets Home Alone-esque almost, and it fit really, like, randomly in the context of the movie. Kylo Ren's theme is like 4 notes, but it's so ominous and badass and awesome, and it morphs into this like crazy minor like demented section when he's on the bridge when the sun basically gets blotted out and you're like, oh shit, and you can feel it. That's John Williams, and I don't know if there's anything anyone wants to say, but I just say that he manipulates your feelings and you don't feel.
No, I'm good with that.
You don't feel upset by it.
And like I remember because yesterday I passed along that video to you,
and I watched the whole hour.
It was awesome. I passed her a video during work of John Williams. It was a master class, like
kind of like an actor
inside the actor studio, but with a class.
Yeah, exactly. It was John Williams and Steven Spielberg on a stage just talking. No one moderating. It was just them talking, saying how they work and all this stuff. It was amazing.
They brought clips and compared.
I think they
awesome.
brought. I'm glad they brought him. Not so much they brought him back. I'm glad he chose to come back.
Yeah.
And my favorite song is Binary Sunset. I love, and they milked that. Like they didn't milk it, but like they warped it to be a part of this movie, and they made it more through like so just it's like there's so much hope in that song.
And it almost hints at certain plot points throughout the film that like make you feel like Rey is like Luke, or certain moments in the film that are inspiring. That theme comes in a lot.
Because I remember even during the trailers when they were releasing them, I'm just like, I just want to like listen to that when I shower. It's time to shampoo. It's time to scrub harder.
And being, 2 of the 4 of us are horn players, so John Williams has used French horn in a way that's like.
Nobody's business.
Completely nerd out about it. I think it's worth noting. We have to.
What horn was that? I wonder who made that noise.
Cantina. Okay. We have to say thank you to George Lucas for creating these characters, but thank him for sending them off and into the capable hands of J.J. Abrams. I know that 3 of the 4 of us have had faith in him for some time now.
No. So, as you know, Adrian's been a hater since we started. Yes. This is my moment. We were waiting in line, and Adrian was still saying J.J. sucks. Yeah. And me and Sean and Jen were like, everyone in this line is against you.
There were people that we didn't know were
Play the
turning
video,
around.
Jen. Play it.
Oh,
yes.
wait, yeah.
When they were done with the movie, Jen
fuck.
took out her camera.
I completely forgot.
And she's like, Adrian, what did you
I don't
think?
know if there's profanity in this, but
There's plenty. This is me.
Turn
It's
it
of
up.
course there's profanity.
of course there is. It also was shining a giant light in your face right after a movie. So
It's
it's probably
necessary.
mad.
I feel like I'm in Back to the Future at the Twin Pines Mall. I don't know how, but they found us.
Okay.
I still think JJ's overrated.
Okay, this is what I'll say. I just saw Star Wars The Force Awakens. I will say this. I will never say a bad thing about J.J. Abrams again.
Oh my god.
He can produce 6 terrible Star Trek movies from here on
He
out.
gave us that.
He can make a porno for all I know. But he will always be known because he brought Star Wars back to what it originally was.
And there you have it.
Wipes and all. There was only one lens flare that I remember. Alright? It was really...
I'm glad we
So it's on record.
yeah.
I'll say this.
Oh, I think you've said
I'm in-
enough.
Yeah, we can jump over next.
That was my
I'm not gonna say anything bad. I'm gonna say this. I'm not saying that like. I'm saying from here on out.
He's got a goofy
just
grin on
repeats
his
it.
face.
He's
amazing.
He's officially a great director. I am not ready to call him the next Steven Spielberg.
Oh,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But he's now I'm ready to say he's on the right track.
Okay.
Yes.
On the right track, man.
All right, I
Just
said enough good things about the guy. Damn it.
Colin Trevorrow is on the right track.
No,
But,
fuck
like,
that guy. No, I never said no. Fuck Colin Trevorrow.
All right, well, we'll go to our fun section since
Alright.
we've already kicked off some fun in this little kind of.
I just said J.J.
Burden of
Abrams is
Adrian.
good. It's not fun for me.
All right, so I would like to quickly ask the room, what was the moment in the movie that sort of convinced you that this was going to be like a hell of a ride? Like, was there like one?
I liked when Finn and Rey were like flying away from the what are they called?
The TIE Fighter?
TIE Fighters, sorry. And then they like ran into each other in the middle of the ship.
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my god! That was so.
That was like, what if you put 2 normal people in a Millennium
Yeah.
Falcon? They figured out how to fly
Yeah.
it. They're like, oh my god. Yeah, that was a good part.
There's so many moments I could have chose from. Like the Kylo Ren stopping the blast was badass.
I think that collectively got the room.
Yeah.
I think
That
that
got
one for
everyone's
me
attention.
was just like instant like there's no other word but like boner. Like, just, no,
Sci-fi boner.
but I think the sequence that's for me I was like this is gonna be really exciting is when Finn helped Poe Dameron escape from the Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
And where he's just like, hey man, it's because I'm
The
gonna
right-
help you escape because it's the right thing to do. You need a pilot.
Yeah.
I need a pilot.
I need a pilot. And then when he's like, hey, what's your name? FN2187. And I was just like,
What?
No, your name's Finn. And I'm just like,
They just
And then they blow the missiles up, and like Finn goes crazy. He's like,
it was just great. It was like seeing Top Gun in for like
we're not
3
going back to
minutes into the movie.
Jakku. We're not going back to Boom.
So-
When that happened, I was just like, okay, man, this is exciting again.
Oh
this
my
is
God.
great.
And it only took a few minutes in the movie too.
Sean.
I liked the lightsaber fight at the end.
Mm-hmm.
No. Sorry. The question was, what was the moment that convinced you that this would be?
Oh,
so
well-
like the
So it
first.
took you
Honestly,
2 hours.
no.
2 hours to figure out.
So they got into the woods.
No,
It sounds like a me answer.
no, like when you said it when the blaster when he stopped the blaster,
Oh my god.
the sound all of that had
Yeah.
was
true.
like well first of all you have to see it in IMAX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
For
like
the
the
sound
sound that it
alone.
had when the lightsaber first like
Yeah.
when he first took out his lightsaber
his
and
saber's
stopped
ominous. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just
sounded
like,
broken almost. You're like, oh
holy
my god.
crap.
He's keeping it together.
And it actually is, I found out.
Yeah, it's a broken crystal. I know, because I read part of your book.
There's another book. I wrote it. No, but I'm glad you brought up that point. I like that they just did like a quick thing. I'm glad they brought that now whoever uses the Force, there's a legitimate sound to it.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it was kind of an atmospheric low.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
of
awesome.
them.
both of them when
Yeah,
both of them used
especially
it.
when they were fighting back and forth
Yeah.
in that
It
sequence.
sounds like that awkward moment where it's like between fart and stomach rumble. It's like
You're like, do it.
It was so intense with the cutaways between their faces. For me, the moment why I got sucked into the movie was when BB-8 rolled up and looked into the sky and saw the stormtroopers coming. I know it's kind of a girly response, but the way he was being puppeteered, I was like, this little sucker's got a character. And then he rolled off. I'm like, and he's actually there. I was in. I was like, they made that shit actually roll in the sand. That I was in because it wasn't CGI.
Right.
Droid. It was fantastic.
That poor hamster in there.
Yeah. I hope he got paid over.
Well, fun side note is that they had 2 separate puppeteers offset working BB-8, and when the character rapped, they actually treated him like a real person and like carried him off the set and like gave him a round of applause, and like the two puppeteers were like,
fuck you.
What in the world? Like, they thought it was awesome.
What about us?
Yeah, but they're like sitting in the corner, like playing.
Get out of the way, John.
So that was my moment. But I think I want to just really quickly. We've already talked about it a little bit, but what was your favorite old school introduction? Because I feel like everyone got a little fun moment, and I feel like the obvious one is like Han Solo, but like there's a few. For me, I'll start off it was the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
that one was like
that was brilliant.
I thought that one was really good. I also like C-3PO because he just pops in the frame. He's like,
Hello,
and I'm like, oh, this motherfucker.
And he even like says another stupid line at the end. He's like, "Princesses, right?"
Yeah, he just he's like princesses. I'm like, well, princesses what? Like, it was weird to see him like be goofy like that.
I don't know. I liked Luke's at the end, even though it's waited at the
yeah,
because you're waiting
can't
for
not
it.
talk about
You're
it.
like,
Yeah,
it's coming, and then it's
I was so
finally-
nervous they were just gonna do the cloak and then like cut to black.
Yeah.
I'm
They
glad
actually
you
showed
shared-
his face.
Yeah.
My only thing is when he takes the cloak off, he takes it off, and I'm reenacting this now to anyone who can't see it. He takes the hood and he just does this weird thing with his hands where he's like.
Brings his hands
Mind
down
blown.
slowly.
He does like a spirit fingers but doesn't move his fingers, so it's just like
Drop
this
the
weird
mic,
like.
but he dropped the hood.
He'd been waiting like 20 years. To do
He's
that.
like I saw Obi-Wan
Can
do
be a
this once.
can that be a thing? Drop the hood. Drop
I've
the
been wearing
hood.
hoodies to work purposely because I feel like a Jedi
This
when I
is-
wear it.
Damn it.
You've been
I'm just
missing
gonna
out.
start wearing a cloak. No,
No one
I
has
walk
a
in with
And you
it.
just turn slowly to
And I
the swivel
open it.
chair.
Take my mouse pad out.
That's such a nerdy thing to do. I would say we've already talked about favorite moment, favorite character. Do we want to break down some conspiracy theories? We can do quickly. Who do you think is Rey's parents?
I think we don't know. I don't think it's a significant Jedi. I don't think she's a Skywalker.
Okay,
That's
what do you
my
think?
Fritz.
100% Luke's kid.
What do you think?
Side
I
note.
really thought Luke's kid, but Jen's been trying to lead me to say it's Han's.
I think it's Han and Leia's.
I think you're all wrong.
Really?
I
How?
I think that Luke, being as strong with the Force as he was, has an ability to mind wipe people. And I think he mind wiped everyone to protect Rey because Rey is actually Kylo Ren's sister.
I think she has training, and they mind wiped her from that.
And
I don't know who, but I think it's
Ooh.
Luke's kid.
And then say the other thing when she's walking up the hill.
When there's minor details that suggest that she has more of an affinity to Han. Like he gave her the blaster to like keep her safe, and she put it back behind her back. When she's walking up the steps at the end of the film, she's wearing it like on her thigh, like Han Solo used to. So like these little send ups, like she's a really good pilot at the Millennium Falcon, which like no one. That's such an old ship. Like what? There's just like little send ups to her having too much in common with Han and Leia than with Luke. So I would love for that to be the case. I don't know how logistically they would mind wipe everyone, but if people thought like someone died,
Mind wipe everyone.
or if like they just they made it seem like she died, if they just think it's a coincidence that this girl whose name isn't really Rey, it could
Maybe they called like a meeting of like Congress, and then like Will Smith came in and did.
Jar Jar Binks is like mind wipe them all.
Everyone look here.
Look at this.
Time to save the world. No, my theory is like not based on anything. It's just what I think it would make sense would be if she was a daughter of one of the other Jedi, and they handed it to Luke saying, "Look, like I don't trust my safety or hers. I trust this child with you."
Yeah.
And then during all the Kylo Ren trainings, when it happened, he's like, "I need to hide her."
It could be like Max von Sydow's character's son's kid or something.
Am I thinking of like
you never
popes
know.
or something? But are like Jedi supposed to be celibate?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, technically.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
because
Anakin
that's why I don't.
didn't
I
follow
think
Skywalkers seem to be
They
not
seem to
following that
bend
rule
that
at
rule.
all.
Yeah. I mean that's
like to bend that ass.
But do you like, what about the staff? The staff she has.
okay. So
A lot
I'll
of people
show.
think about that.
I'll show you
What
a
about
picture. Yeah, what's the theory?
Because she continuously has it. She never forgets it. She always grabs it. It's with her throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
What if it's like a covered, like
Like a
what if
lightsaber
yeah,
or something.
what if it were a
like
lightsaber
opens
that you
up.
open
well,
up
they said
and
it
it's
might be
a-
like a giant lightsaber.
So
Yeah.
Not like now, but they could make it into that.
there's I guess in canon there are actual like staff sabers,
Yeah.
which are like the coolest things I've ever seen, and I think she'd be badass at it because she always
Yeah.
lunges at people.
Yeah.
Like that's like her style.
Yeah.
So
Kinda like-
oh my god, because
It'd be
she's
sweet.
gonna
I
have
can't
her
wait to
own
find
lightsaber
out.
damage.
I cannot wait to find
So
out.
I mean, our discussion went like maybe 5 minutes over than we expected, but and actually there's 2 minutes that we had to cut out in the beginning because we couldn't get this thing started properly.
Yeah.
But if
Gotta
you
get
haven't,
warmed up.
I hope you guys loved Star Wars as much as we did. If you
Yes.
didn't, please let us know what you didn't like about it. I feel like there's only
And
been
also
2
let
or
us know
3
what's
things.
wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. It's really more a reflection of you.
Give us your mental history.
Yeah, give us a breakdown. But yeah, so I think next week we'll have more of a discussion on some of the
Danish girl. Oh,
best films of the year, perhaps Danish. Yeah, I mean whatever we can fit into this next
Joy.
weekend.
No.
There are
The
a
Big
lot of
Short.
Yeah, maybe
that did really good in the
We saw
ratings. Yeah.
It's very solid. So there's a few films coming out this weekend that we'll have to do a review. Maybe a bit of a breakdown of the best films of the year, since that will be the end of December.
Year. By then, we'll have seen hopefully The Revenant. It decides to come out.
We're in Connecticut, so we probably won't get the advanced screening.
Probably won't come out till DVD.
We won't see it till February. There's no other way to wrap this up other than Star Wars is awesome. Go see it again. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to give this a listen. I'm JP Lee.
I'm Adrian. Can't wait for Rogue One.
I'm Sod.
Jonathan.
Just wanted to give them one more time to talk,
I'm
even though
these
Sean's like beat red.
Is someone gonna say "May the Force be with you"?
Well, you just did. And on that note, we'll see you when the credits roll.
Sean, get the fuck out of here. No, I'm joking.